Have you ever stopped to wonder why we live the way we do? Why we have leaders and followers, heroes and villains? Where did the instruction manual for our laws, our social rules, and even our ideas of success and failure come from? We usually look to history, economics, or politics for those answers, assuming our modern rational world must have been built on equally rational foundations. But what if I told you the real answers aren't in a history book, but in the stories we've been telling for thousands of years? What if the most influential architects of our world weren't kings or philosophers, but the anonymous storytellers who first dreamed up gods and monsters, epic journeys, and cosmic battles? These ancient myths are not just fairy tales. They are the invisible blueprints that built our world, and they're still shaping who you are today. Now, I know this sounds like a bold claim. We live in an age of science and data, where we can map the human genome and see the edges of the universe. Surely we've moved past primitive stories about thunder gods and sea monsters. But the truth is, we haven't. We've just repackaged them. Here's the core idea. Ancient myths are the invisible scripts that built our societies. Think of them as the foundational software, running in the background of our collective consciousness, that established the rules of the game we're all still playing. These stories were powerful tools for organizing humanity. They gave us the first frameworks for social order, justified who got to be in charge, and forged our deepest identities. And once you learn to see this ancient code, you'll start seeing it everywhere. To really get the power of myth, you have to go back in time to a world that was chaotic, terrifying, and completely mysterious. For early humans, the world wasn't a set of predictable physical laws. It was just stuff happening. Why does the sun rise? Why do the seasons change? Why does lightning destroy things? What happens when we die? Without science, these weren't just curious questions. They were terrifying anxieties. And this is where myth makes its grand entrance. At its most basic level, mythology was humanity's first real attempt to make sense of everything. Creation myths, which you can find in pretty much every culture, are the perfect example. Whether the world hatched from a cosmic egg, was born from a divine battle, or formed from the body of a giant, these stories all do the same thing. They turn chaos into order. They give us a narrative that explains why things are the way they are. And that act of explaining is an act of power. It gives humanity a foothold in a universe that once seemed totally random. But myths did more than just explain thunderstorms. They acted as a kind of mythic charter, a divine permission slip for cultural norms and social institutions. Think about it. If the world was created in a huge battle between gods of order and titans of chaos, as some Greek traditions believed, then it makes sense that society has to be on constant guard against chaos. This isn't just an idea, it has real-world consequences. It justifies laws, rulers, and a structured society that can keep the forces of disorder from taking over. Let's look at the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish, one of the oldest stories ever written down. On the surface, it's a blockbuster tale about the god Marduk defeating the primordial sea goddess Tiamat and creating the world from her body. But it's also a brilliant piece of political and social programming. The story was recited publicly every year at the New Year's festival in Babylon, which was more than just entertainment. The myth establishes Marduk as the top god, the king of all other gods. By extension, the human king of Babylon, seen as Marduk's guy on Earth, had his authority stamped with divine approval. The myth told everyone, from the high priest to the humble farmer, that their society structure, with a king on top, wasn't just some human idea. It was a reflection of the cosmos itself. It was natural, divine, and necessary. This is a pattern you see again and again. Myths bake the rules of society into the fabric of the universe, making them feel sacred and unquestionable. They're like the original Constitution, not written on paper, but burned into the collective soul of a culture. They answer the awkward questions kids ask, but more importantly, as the scholar Robert Graves said, they justify an existing social system. They provide the foundational logic, the blueprint, that everything else is built on. So, if myths are the blueprint for society, one of their most important jobs is to draw the lines, to build the walls and floors that separate people into different groups. In short, myths are incredibly good at creating and maintaining social hierarchies. They make an unequal distribution of power seem not just okay, but natural and divinely planned. This is where myths shift from explaining the world to actively controlling it. One of the clearest and most lasting examples comes from the Hindu creation myth of Purusha. According to the ancient Sanskrit text, the Rig Veda, the universe and society were born from the sacrifice of a cosmic giant, Purusha. When the gods carved up his body, each part created a different piece of the world. But crucially, the story also lays out the origin of the four main social castes, or Varnas. From Purusha's mouth came the Brahmins, the priests and scholars. From his arms, the Kshatriyas, the warriors and rulers. From his thighs, the Vaishyas, the merchants and farmers. And from his feet, the Shudras, the laborers and servants. Let's just pause and appreciate the genius of this story. It's not just a tale, it's a sociological masterpiece. It doesn't just say society has four classes, it explains why in a way that feels cosmic and unarguable. The hierarchy isn't the result of history or economics, it's baked into creation itself. Your place in society wasn't based on your talent, but on which part of the cosmic body you came from. The Brahmins are at the top because the head is literally higher than the feet. This myth justified the caste system in India for thousands of years, making social division seem like a natural part of a functioning universe. To challenge the caste system wasn't just social rebellion, it was to defy reality itself. This pattern isn't unique to India. Take the medieval European concept of the divine right of kings. This was a political and religious story, which claimed that a monarch gets their right to rule directly from God and isn't accountable to anyone on earth. This is a myth, a story designed to legitimize an extreme power imbalance. The king wasn't just a successful warlord, he was God's chosen representative. To question the king was to question God. This myth did the same thing as the story of Purusha. It took the power structure out of the messy realm of human debate and placed it into the neat, clean realm of divine fact. So, what about today? We don't literally believe our leaders are chosen by gods, or that our social class is determined by a cosmic giant. But have these scripts really disappeared? Or have they just changed their clothes? The language shifted from divine to natural. We talk about born leaders, or the idea that some people are just naturally better at certain jobs. We've built entire economic mythologies around figures like the visionary CEO, granting them special status and huge rewards based on a story about their unique genius. These modern narratives might be secular, but they echo the same ancient function. They justify inequality by telling a story that makes it feel deserved, natural, and even necessary. So far, we've seen how myths built the external structures of our world, the social blueprints and the power ladders. But their influence goes even deeper. It goes inward. Myths aren't just about the cosmos or the kingdom. They're about you. They are the source code for our identities, both as a group and as individuals. First, let's talk about collective identity. What does it mean to be Roman or Norse or American? It means you share a set of stories. A myth gives a tribe or a nation a common origin, a shared history packed with heroic ancestors and legendary triumphs. These stories bind people together, creating a sense of us versus them. The Romans had the story of Romulus and Remus, brothers suckled by a she-wolf, a tale reflecting their self-image as a fierce, resilient people destined for greatness. The Israelites had the story of the Exodus, a powerful narrative of escaping slavery and making a pact with God, which has been central to Jewish identity for millennia. These aren't just history lessons, they're identity-forming narratives that instill a shared sense of purpose and destiny. But the power of myth also reaches into the most personal parts of our lives. They give us the models for how to behave, the archetypes that help us understand ourselves. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung argued that these archetypes, figures like the hero, the sage, the trickster, and the great mother, are part of a collective unconscious, a shared psychic inheritance that pops up in myths all over the world. These aren't just characters, they are fundamental patterns of human experience. Think about the hero's journey, a narrative pattern the mythologist Joseph Campbell made famous. It's a story we see everywhere, from the ancient epic of Gilgamesh to Odysseus, from the story of the Buddha to the story of Christ, and all the way to Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter, and Katniss Everdeen. An ordinary person gets a call to adventure, enters a world of wonders and trials, faces a final ordeal, wins a victory, and returns home transformed, with some gift or wisdom for their people. Why is this one story so endlessly popular? Because it's a myth about personal growth. It's a roadmap for navigating life. It tells us that we can leave our comfort zone, face our fears, the dragons, discover a hidden strength, and return as a more capable person. When we watch a superhero movie, we're not just getting entertained. We're taking part in a modern ritual, watching an ancient myth that reaffirms our belief in courage, sacrifice, and transformation. The heroes change, the costumes change, but the mythic code stays the same. And it's not just the hero. Ever feel like Sisyphus, pushing a boulder up a hill just to have it roll back down? That's a myth giving us a powerful metaphor for futility. Ever warned someone not to fly too close to the sun? You're using the myth of Icarus to caution against reckless ambition. These stories give us a language for our deepest psychological experiences. They provide the roles we can step into: the wise mentor, the rebel, the devoted caregiver. They shape our ambitions, our fears, and our understanding of what it means to live a good life. The aha moment. This is the point where it all clicks together. We started with myths as cosmic blueprints that brought order to chaos. We saw how those blueprints were also for society, justifying laws and rulers. Then, we saw how those social blueprints were used to build hierarchies, locking people into roles. And finally, we saw how myths give us the very archetypes and stories that shape who we are. Here's the aha moment. These aren't three separate things. They are one single, integrated system. The cosmic blueprint, the social hierarchy, and the personal identity are all connected parts of the same master program. The creation myth explains the world. That world has a certain order, which is mirrored in society. Your identity and purpose are then defined by the role you're given within that society. You're a warrior, a priest, or a farmer, not just because of your birth, but because that's your cosmic function, your part to play in the great drama. The myth validates the social order. The social order gives you an identity, and your identity makes you a willing participant in the myth. It's a perfectly self-reinforcing loop. This is why these ancient stories have such incredible staying power. They aren't just stories about the world. They were the operating system for the world. They work on every level of human experience at once, from the grand scale of civilization down to the intimate scale of your own soul. They offer a complete framework that explains everything: the universe, your society, and your place in it. The invisible script is all of these things working together. It's the background program telling us that order is better than chaos, that hierarchies are natural, and that our lives should be a story of challenge and growth. We don't perform public rituals to Marduk anymore, but our blockbuster movies are basically rituals celebrating order over chaos. We've rejected the divine right of kings, but we're still obsessed with mythologies of leadership and success. The myths are still here. They're in our language, our art, our politics, and our dreams. They are the invisible architecture of our reality. For thousands of years, we looked to myths to explain the world. Today, we're realizing their most profound function wasn't to explain the world, but to build it. They aren't dusty relics from a superstitious past, but the living, breathing software that continues to run our societies, our hierarchies, and our sense of self. They prove that the most powerful force in human history isn't an army or an empire, but a good story. Recognizing this code is the first step to understanding the deep forces that guide our world. It lets you see the ancient patterns repeating in modern headlines and understand the timeless stories playing out in your own life. So the next time you feel a surge of national pride or question authority or try to be the hero of your own story, just take a second. You might be running a program that was written centuries ago in a language of gods and monsters, but which still speaks to the deepest truths of who we are. What invisible scripts do you see running your life? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this look into the hidden forces that shape our world, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more explorations into the architecture of our reality.